Hello, everyone. Controlled Chaos speaking, here with another episode of Is It Genesis Ready? Let me set the scene for you for this one. Me, having played Yu-Gi-Oh! For almost the entirety of its runtime, having recently reached the 5Ds era, being somewhat excited about the new addition to the Synchro Monsters. And then this deck comes along and provides a field spell that puts it to a halt and gives zombie monsters a leg up in the competition, so much so that it sort of becomes a problem card for quite a while. The deck that we are reviewing today is Zombie World, and its featured card, like, not only does it have a ace card, it also has a titular card, and we will get to both eventually. So, let's dive right in. So, the ace of the deck is, interesting enough, a Red Eyes card. Red Eyes Zombie Dragon. And once again, we keep up the streak of monsters not needing specific tributes to bring it out. On top of that, it now has a way to make summoning it easier. You may tribute summon this card in attack position by tributing a zombie. And when it destroys a zombie monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, that zombie can be special summoned to your side of the field. At least that's what I'm getting from this text. You can special summon that zombie monster. One assumes that it would be summoned to your side of the field. So, a very powerful effect, seemingly situational, but you're sure to find out when we get to the spell cards. So, onward we go. Now, we have a side archetype. First it was Benevolent Mech, now we have a Malevolent Mech. Let's see, and it seems to have a similar effect to the fairy type Gokuen. But let's see. You can normal summon this card without tributing once per turn during the end phase. If this card was summoned this way, send it to the graveyard and take damage equal to its original attack in the graveyard. This card must be the only zombie monster on the field to activate and resolve this effect. See that in the graveyard. So as long as it's not the only zombie type monster on the field, you can keep it on the field. An instant 2400 on the field. However, this was the point where the game was starting to speed up, so Gokuen might not have as much relevance in today's standards. Another retrain, Paladin of the Cursed Dragon. Probably referencing Paladin of White Dragon. Once per turn, you can target a level 4 or lower zombie type monster in the opponent's graveyard that was destroyed by battle, special summon that target. Another seemingly situational card, and one that would actually have use as bringing up material, especially in the advent of link monsters. So, a useful card, I would say. Journia. I believe this card was used by Merrick at one point. Let's see. After this face-up card you control was destroyed by an opponent's card effect and sent to the graveyard, special summon it from the graveyard during your next standby phase. Destroyed by an opponent's card effect. Now this one is a situational card. and hopefully the only situational card in this deck. Patrician of Darkness, level 5 monster that allows you to choose the attack targets of your opponent's attacks. A powerful effect, but nothing that would keep it on the field long enough for it to be useful. So this one is iffy at best, and subpar at worst. But I believe there were quite a few ways of bringing zombies out to the field, so it could see good mana play. Once per turn, you can flip this card and face down defense. When this card is flipped face up, it gains 300 attack and defense until the end of the turn it was attacked. Absolutely underwhelming. Like, all you'll have is a 2000 defender with 1900 attack. And while it was the sought after stat of the time, the base stat has become 200 and defense is preferably 250 or 3000. Now we have Pyramid Turtle, and I've mentioned this before in Zombie Madness. This is the Searcher. Less relevant in the current format that Genesys would probably garner, but it could still see use. Pyramid Turtle allows you to special summon zombie monsters when it is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard with less defense of a certain amount. And most zombie monsters, if not all of them, feature absolutely low defense points, so Pyramid Turtle would have an easy time bringing stuff out. Master Qianxi. Just a normal monster with subpar stats. There's possibly a reason in the spell and traps why there is a normal monster in the lineup. And then we have Spirit Reaper. So with this, they had reprinted him at the time. And Spirit Reaper cannot be destroyed by battle. However, it is very frail when it comes to taking effect, destruction by effect, because if this guy is targeted, then it is automatically destroyed right then. And the final effect doesn't really come into play that often, so it's just forgotten. But yes, Spirit Reaper used to be such an effective wall, but then people realized, well, all I have to do is target it, and it's gone. And so that's what ended up happening. Alright, we're at the first quarter. So, we're starting to see inklings of a strategy going on, seeing the payoffs that are available, but we're not seeing any way of getting there. But we soon will. Getsu Fuma. I'm noticing a lot of foreign names. Ah, yes. Ah. This one could probably see a lot of use in this deck's strategy. If this card battles a fiend or zombie type monster, destroy that monster at the end of the damage step. Let's see. So, it's much like a card called Ally of Justice Cataster, where if it battles a certain type or attribute of monster, that monster is automatically destroyed. However, the only difference being in this case is Getsu Fuma requires it to be at the end of this damage step for the effect to go off. So you would likely have already taken damage and Getsu Fuma would be destroyed, but it's a trade-off tactic to get rid of a problem monster. So previously, at the point where this deck was released, this would be a powerful card. Now the game has sped up too much for that. Okay, Ryukaki, which literally translates to Dragonbone Demon. This card is a bit of an oddball for the deck. At the end of the damage step, if this card battled a warrior or spellcaster, that monster is destroyed. So, I guess it's here because it to serve as a level 6 2400 beat stick. Because with the titular card, with the titular field spell in this deck, Ryukaki is just an odd duck. But we'll see if there's something in the deck that makes use of it. And apparently a zombie deck wouldn't be complete without Regenerating Mummy. When sent from the hand to the graveyard by opponent's card effect, it's returned to the hand. A good pitfall, but all in all, too situational, and the only thing it's got going for it is its subpar stats for a level 4. There's no way for you to utilize this card's effect for yourself, so really it's just to shield you from your opponent's discard effects, which are nowadays few and far between. But there are 2 of them, so it could be just here as a level 4 monster. Deslakuda. Once per turn, you can change this card face down defense position. When this card is flip summoned, draw a card. Just a underwhelming card all around. Because its draw effect requires you to flip summon it, which means it can't even be attacked into. So, just some random fodder. You'll likely just be, I don't know why I put that on. You'll just be likely getting rid of it for something else. Marionette Mite. Let's see, this one seems to be a bit more of a recent addition at the time. You can discard this card to the graveyard, then target a fiend or a zombie monster your opponent controls. Take control of that target until the end phase. This one is absolutely good for this deck because of the titular field spell that we are getting closer and closer to revealing. But it's seemingly situational, only affecting fiend or zombie monsters. But this is a good alternative to mind control should you face those kind of decks or have some way of changing the typing. So yes, a very good card for the deck. Plague Wolf. Once per turn, you can make this card's attack become double its original attack until the end of the turn. Once per turn, during the end phase, if this effect was activated, destroy this card. Absolutely underwhelming effect all around. I don't really see value in this outside of it being a level 3 zombie monster. And now the final monster of the deck, Zombie Master. If I recall correctly, this one has more value than most of the other zombies in the deck. Once per turn, you can send a monster from your hand to the grave, then target a level 4 or lower zombie in either grave, special summon that target. This monster must be face up on the field to activate and to resolve this effect. So this is a very useful extender, I believe it would be called. An extender or maybe a starter. Like turn 1, you could summon this, send a monster you want to summon to the field from the hand to the graveyard, and then special summon it, all in one. Later on, you could actually use this effect on your opponent's graveyard monster, which with the card that we're about to go into. So a very great addition to the deck. Since that's the end of the monsters, I'll go ahead and do the half-point review here. So we're starting to see a few oddball additions, but we're also seeing a few more cards that can support the strategy employed by this deck, as well as be supported by the titular field spell that I will now go into. Since we're getting tired of me saying titular and field spell and such, let's finally put it to bed here. So, here is the titular card of the deck. Zombie World. This card, once it was released, it has caused zombies to be quite a threat. However, I'm not seeing it as often nowadays as people are less reliant on what this card blocks. So, let's just have a look. It's very simple. All monsters on the field and in the graveyards become zombie monsters, and neither player can tribute summon monsters except for zombie monsters. Let that sink in for a second. Everything on the field and in the graveyard is now a zombie, and you're not allowed to tribute summon. The only monsters you're allowed to tribute summon are the zombie monsters in your hand. Granted, the second one is less powerful, as there are probably 1 or 2 decks that would utilize tribute summoning. However, back when this was released, it was much more prevalent because there were methods of keeping a monster held in place, and the only way to get past that would be to tribute it away. But with this, that is no longer an option. But the big takeaway is that this card turns everything on the field and in the graveyard into zombies. And, as we've seen so far, there are quite a few methods in the deck that would allow you to special summon those monsters under your employ. So this is possibly one of, if not the most powerful card of the deck, and perhaps the linchpin of the entire strategy. Spell Shattering Arrow. Destroy as many face-up spells your opponent controls as possible. Inflict 500 damage to your opponent for each one. So, a sort of heavy storm, but it only affects face-up spells. Yeah, it doesn't do anything to traps. So, very situational. But it has a good amount of potential, so I'm willing to forgive it. Ah yes, this card. And it is still banned to this day. But it used to be quite the staple. Cold Wave. It can only be activated at the start of main phase 1. Until your next turn, you and your opponent cannot play or set any spell or trap cards. This would mostly be utilized in a deck that doesn't really rely on spells and traps that much, and can keep your opponent from setting up on you. Which I think was probably the necessitator of strategies involving monsters, summoning more monsters and such. But it is still limited, it is still forbidden, and with good reason. And I'm pretty sure that this will be the first instance of seeing points. Could even have 400, it could even have 100 points. Let's see. Yes, I got it right. A 100 point card. So from here on out, if we see any more point value cards, then that means that this is not Genesys ready. Time to continue, and I can see a couple of contenders. So let's see. Oh, quite a few contenders actually. So let's keep going. Magical Stone Excavation. Discard 2 cards. Return a spell in the graveyard to the hand. High cost, high reward. Not much else to say about it. Let's see what the point list says. Okay. So far, so good. Card of Safe Return. I can see this one having points allotted to it. When a monster is special summoned from the graveyard, you can draw a card. And that's it. This deck is a bust. But let's not let that stop us from sallying forth. We now have Creature Swap. And I think this is the card that necessitated Kianshi. Nope, never mind. But still, each player chooses a monster they control, switches those monsters, and they cannot change their battle positions for the rest of the turn. Yeah, it can be seen as a pretty powerful card. And it's at 1 point, which tells me that it would combo greatly with another 100 point card. I'd forgotten that this one was in there too, and this is another problem card with the zombies. Book of Life. Target a zombie in the grave and a monster in your opponent's grave. Special summon the first target, then banish the second target. So yes, simultaneous resource banisher and resurrection. And it's apparently still unlimited, so this would be a great zombie monster reborn. Here's a card I'd like to call a summoner, or a lucky cloud, or whatever. With this on the field, once per turn, you can special summon a zombie from the hand. You must control no monsters to activate and to resolve this effect. So yeah, that is essentially an effect that is shared with at least one other card. And it is very useful for this deck, but it can also be seen as a very slow spell. Perhaps. It's iffy. Alright, let's go through these two quickly. We've got Terraforming, which essentially makes Zombie World 2 copies in this deck, as you'll be able to search it out. An attempt to make things balanced, and Terraforming also has points added to it. And then Pot of Avarice, with 5 monsters in the graveyard. If you shuffle them into the deck, you draw 2 cards. So another pot card that allows draw advantage, but this one has a prerequisite that is tied to its secondary function. Shrink is very famous and has a pretty powerful effect. Target one face-up monster in the field. The original attack becomes halved until the end of this turn. Useful if you want to run over someone. However, because it targets, this can be easily dealt with. Alright. We're reaching the final quarter, and we are seeing the strategy actually take shape. So yeah. But I'm still yet to see some use out of the other cards. But let's see if they somehow save face. Let's see, Field Barrier. This is meant to protect your field spells, but in all honesty, it's more of a win more card. Plus, the best strategy is one for the eventuality that your good spell card gets destroyed. What do you do after that? So yeah. So here's one that's like Fissure, but it helps you out more. Target a monster your opponent controls, destroy that monster, then your opponent gains 1,000 life points. Okay. Yeah, this one, I'm not sure what they were going for it, but it ended up being a weapon for your opponent. Alright, Ribbon of Rebirth. During the end phase, if the equipped monster was destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard this turn, special summon it from the graveyard to your side of the field. So this is a get out of jail free card, but it actually feels more rather win an honorable battle. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. But yes, another card that allows for restoration, albeit at a cost. And should it ever be broken when an opponent's monster is sent to the grave, I'm guessing a good amount of time allotted will cause Amethyst to pop back up in the initial area, I think. The final spell card to be reviewed for this deck is Card Destruction. I believe we've gone over it before, so we'll just go over it. Card Destruction, both players discard their entire hand, then they draw the same number of cards they discarded. An excellent way of getting monsters into the graveyard, which is what the zombie deck wants. And look at that. It's got some points to it. Now we move on to the trap cards. And there are two traps that I've gone over before. Dust Tornado, which is Mystical Space Typhoon's otter cousin. And Bottomless Trap Hole, which is a more powerful version of Trap Hole that had seen a lot of play during this era. Final 4 cards that are trap cards. And seems like a better ratio for the deck too. Like more monsters than spells, far more spells than traps. This seems like a healthy balance. So Imperial Iron Wall. Simply put, neither player can banish cards. So this serves a purpose because you want monsters in the graveyard. If they keep banishing them, then you're done for. And we got Tutton Mask. Pretty sure this is a zombie support card. When a spell or trap is activated that targets one zombie monster on the field and no other cards, the activation is negated and you destroy it. So yeah, it's zombie protection, but if the zombie isn't targeted or if there are multiple targets, Tutton Mask will not work. And actually, the last two I've also gone over. Wabaku protects your monsters from being destroyed by Bell and protects you from taking damage by Bell for a turn. Let me double check. No, I think it protects effect damage as well. You take no Bell damage, your monster cannot be destroyed by Bell. So yeah, effect damage is fair game, but still it's very powerful. As the major form of dealing damage is through monster attacks. Then we have Magical Arm Shield, which switches the attack target of an opponent's monster to another one of your opponent's monster, which is also useful. Alright. Is this deck Genesys ready? Ooh. Alright. Is this deck Genesys ready? The answer is a resounding no. Can it be made Genesys ready? Possibly. It's possible, but it's also going to be difficult. Like, there's a big item to be taken out of the deck, but then you have the smaller ones. So it would have to be decided which one it was more important than the other, and if Genesys cards would be useful for it. But this deck is definitely a bust, but the composition on it is also somewhat strong. There are a few odd ducks in there, but I believe at the time this deck was released, there were not that many zombie monsters to be seen. And so this, I believe, changed that. So yes, that was the Zombie World Structure deck. Thank you for watching. Be sure to tune in next week as we'll be going over the spell counter-centric strategy, Spellcaster's Command. Thank you for watching Controlled Chaos. Oh, if you enjoyed this, make sure you hit the subscribe button and make sure the bell's ringing. That will keep you up to date on my uploads. Also be sure to check out my Sure page. I'll be putting polls and events there. Thank you for watching. Controlled Chaos, signing out.